Alrighty, I have returned us after some perfunctory, stupid, not having. Well, I actually had us muted. So, um, first off, welcome Dennis again. While we get this shit rolling and get this shit working. And I had asked you while we were muted about your you used to give notes to local at local open mics or whatnot in the Salt Lake area, and I kind of get the impression from Chuck as well because I think Chuck even still has one of the notes that you gave him from years ago. Double check with him. I don't think he'll lie to you about it, but I saw on my roast, especially as I've been editing the roast in October of myself before I moved back to Florida, how the community kind of has like this protectiveness around like I don't know this sweetness that you have as a person. So people like could you tell me about the notes the notes that you used to give or something like that? Like what were those? Because I think I do something like that, but maybe a little different. So I wanted to hear what your take was on like what you used to do.
Yeah. So back in Alliance Theater used to be at Athena Beans
Mm-hmm.
open mic, and after everyone set, I would give them a note, positive feedback, anything positive. Sometimes it's a short note, sometimes a really long note.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Musicians, poets, comedians all got something. I think musicians probably appreciate it the most because you don't get a lot of feedback on like music or poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And it all started like I had meant to go on open mics on Monday, but like I never put the time to go forward. And like first night I was there, something in me was just like I should write this person a note.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave notes out to people, and like I was like, I should give everyone a note. So I like also had to retroactively like give people notes, being like, hey, this is what I appreciate about your set, or like your poem, or your
Yeah.
song. And people really liked it. Musicians, I know some of them have been like, hey, those really made a difference to me, and I still have those notes, or like I keep in my guitar case. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's really cool
Um,
actually.
but it's like I hated as a kid. People would always be like, "You did a good job." It's like, cool. What did you like? Give me something specific, and like they never
Yeah,
would.
exactly. Like give me more than just good, bad, or ugly. And yeah, I get that.
Yeah, so it's just like golden rule. And this is what I want for others, and it's very easy to give for me.
Yeah. No, I get that because um I get that, but well, I understand that, and I really do kind of appreciate that kind of wholesomeness, especially giving feedback to a creative of any kind. Um, now what did actually what prompted you? Did you stop doing that at some point?
I did. There's a lot of reasons, but it's like it was a lot of work because I pretty much would go through like a whole sticky note of like 30-ish, or like
Mm-hmm.
not full, but it's like it's about 30-ish people you'd write for.
Yeah, like
And like
in a
you
single
can't
night.
talk to anyone, you can't socialize,
Yeah,
you can't even like enjoy people's sets because you're just like, okay, what did I like? Like I have to write something about it.
yeah,
Um, and it like kind of took a toll. But it's also like, is this an unhealthy pattern of like I need to always be giving, or like I need to like prove myself's worth in a way? And it's like, what happens if I don't give out notes? And it's like, oh, nothing. It's like people still appreciate them. Like I'll
yeah.
still give notes out occasionally,
Mm-hmm.
usually around my birthday and Christmas,
Right.
like halfway through the year in June, and then Christmas time. It just depends.
Yeah.
Uh, but sometimes I'll do it again. And like side tangent, like for my birthday, I like to do nice things for other people. I don't like the American culture where it's like it's all about me. Praise me for my birthday. It's like you were born, man. Like no one cares. Ultimately, if you want something cool to happen, like you got to plan that shit.
Yeah, you got to make it happen.
You got to make that stuff happen. Um,
Yeah,
and it's like,
I definitely get that one because
yeah,
I took an adopted mother figure of mine's Christmas party pattern. She used to I believe she used to or still does. I don't think she did it this year, but basically she used to do a big Christmas party at the first Saturday of every December. And so through a few years of trial and error, because my birthday is October 21st, and then Halloween is like October 31st. I eventually started doing the first Saturday of October for this big annual, as I called it, just the annual. And what that meant is that I put together like 100 guest list, coordinated potluck, and got to sort of create this, tradition for a few years when I was living here in Florida before I moved out to Utah. And it was pretty great. It also meant that when it came to my birthday day, I didn't have to worry about anyone or anything. And I remember one of those birthdays where I just sat down in my living room on my couch, 2, 3 weeks since the annual, which was much more about the community thing that I wanted to have for friends that I would only see even once a year with the annual itself. But I got to sit down on my couch on my birthday with a glass of milk, a 20 wing of buffalo blue cheese wings, and just watch something on TV for like an hour. Just have like that was perfectly fine for me for my birthday. I didn't need no cake. I didn't need no festivity. I was like, no, I get to have my day. What does my day look like? Fat and lazy. Fat and lazy. Like this will do just fine. So I think
Then like, you don't need a lot.
no, no, I don't think it does either. I do relate a bit to because I've how do I think about this? I started thinking about how to do the feedback stuff before I was able to get it before I broke into the Salt Lake comedy scene in regards to at least how I overcame my mental barriers and got into the Salt Lake scene, and just started just doing open mics at all. But I always would be listening to sets and I'd be hearing the opportunities inside of people's jokes, or hear like they had a good premise, but their ability to like sort of transition from premise and set up to like punch would be lacking. And so I had at least a few times where I would write something out as it came to me, listening. I have one clear story where Chuck Fury has that sort of that herpes joke, that I know he's been shopping around for a while, and I've sort of watched that one time when he was running it at the Midway open mic at Amanda's open mic, and he told the joke as he had developed it so far, and I kind of gave him the note of just like I don't know what this detail is inside of the joke that is like contextually relevant for like everyone else that isn't from like your generation of knowing like this medication or these things to inform it. So like here's like my feedback is like it's a great premise, it's a great joke. The punchline should hit harder, but something about like not knowing this item, this medication that you're naming throws off the ability for like the joke to just like land even with just like an ignorant audience, let's say, which I pretty much was. So that's what I end up thinking about in terms of a similar note giving because I do my joke writing for just having like a simple open mic set list like on a notepad, but that means I've got a thick notepad, and so sometimes people will run like good jokes. I'm just like, here's the and part. Here's like the bonus thing I think about inside of like what you're doing. It's like here it is folded. You either throw this away, is like come up kind of my mindset. Either you throw this away because you want to stay pure to your craft, or here's like perhaps a punch up opportunity from some random newbie, that's excited to like help make good jokes. So
No.
that was my little bit at the sort of fucking time. So I know you gave me a small list of things that was kind of like a part of your life set. So it's kind of how you want to introduce your set. Part of what's given this podcast like new life, is having a focus inside of the Salt Lake comedy scene where I get, as per my narrative, I could say like I was sort of born there in terms of whatever I do with a comedy career, and then I've got who knows the rest of my life here in Orlando, Florida. But I give a lot to meeting you, Chuck Fury, Josh Martin, Amanda, and such, and really kind of overcoming my fears and then like making even just good acquaintances out there in Salt Lake. So part of this is to sort of platform like the community of Salt Lake and comics that I like or enjoyed, or comics that you could recommend and so on, just to give them like here's because there's a version of this like you'll get a copy of this entire podcast afterwards for whatever
Perfect.
for whatever marketing you want to do. Because I'll have this probably published as soon as possible. I don't have a schedule to keep with how I run the YouTube channel.
Hmm.
But much like what I did with like the Halloween roast, like all the raw footage will be made available on like a Google Drive link or whatever. And then you've got, if I've given you like if it's over 30 days, you may have run out of time or have to hit me up again if you want the copy again, because
All
life
right.
gets busy. But and I'm not paying for all of the channels that I have to have 100 gigs of space to hold up all this raw footage. But
Yeah, yeah.
it's also like if you want this to like run marketing and promotion for your brand and for your your career, like here's the raw footage, run with it. I kind of like don't care, like give basic attribution or whatnot, and then we can sort out life from there. You know.
All right. Sounds great.
Yeah. So we could start between just what's your life like growing up, because it sounds like you grew up in Utah. Like it's one of the notes you had is that you were in the Mormon Church or still are in the Mormon Church. Do you want to sort of break that down for me, and then also for like all of the, I guess, laymen that are nominally aware of the Mormon Church and like what your at least experience with it was?
Yeah. So I was actually raised in Maryland, like the blast radius of DC.
Oh, okay.
So like the Utah Mormonism is very different from what I grew up with.
Right.
Um,
Also, blast radius is a very dark way to describe DC, but keep going. Like,
I mean, if DC got nuked, I'm gone as well.
right.
So
Fair. Okay. Okay.
uh, just the way it is. So yeah, Mormonism. Grew up Mormon. I'm the youngest of five boys. Um, it's been very weird. So I did the mission thing. It's like I went on a LDS mission for 2 years,
Right.
and that's like where I would say I became radicalized.
Like as a Mormon,
And
you
what?
became radicalized?
Yeah, and like when I say radicalized, it's like at like halfway through my mission, I was just hating it because it's awful. You're just knocking doors all day for
Right.
like a multi-billionaire corporation that doesn't give a shit about you.
Right.
And like in theory, they're trying to do good, but like the people in it are trying to do good. The corporation itself, not necessarily. Like you learn about
Right.
like conversion camps where they try to make gay people like straight, and like
Right.
all the awful stuff they did at the BYU campuses,
Right.
uh, sexism, racism. It's just like a
Yeah.
white patriarchal, the white supremacy church, and like they're trying to rebrand that now, but it doesn't matter. It's just like the emotional abuse of
Hmm.
like gaslighting yourself of like I'm not good enough. If I have like any sexual urge, I'm going to
Right.
hell and I can't act on it. And it's like as a kid where you're like I don't know what to do with this, and like your parents won't talk to you about it, or like not just your parents, but like people in general
Hmm.
don't talk about like sexual feelings much. And like when they do, it's just like, whoa, this is out of left field. I am uncomfortable because
It's never been talked
nobody
about,
ever
so
talked to me
there's,
about this.
yeah, not even the adults have ever had those conversations, so they can't even begin to have the conversations with you as a kid, as a
Yeah,
teen
and
or
so it's
anything.
just like weirdness, and also like toxic perfectionism
Right.
of just like you're never good enough, and if I don't do it right the first time, why bother? And like I think one thing for me, my mom is a very positive person, like to the point of like toxic perfectionism
Right.
of just like there's always good things in the world. You just need to look for it. And just like, yeah, but I'm having a really crappy day and that's not really helping. It's like it doesn't help.
I
But I
feel
guess the
like
classic
I
example,
feel like the movie Inside
yeah.
Out, where they had all those emotions and depression was allowed to exist by the end of the movie. It's like, no,
Yeah.
you need your balance. You can't be happy. I
Yeah.
think
I
Ellen.
really like that movie, like
Yeah.
for that reason.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, you have to feel your feelings. The Body Keeps the Score is a really good book on that of just like
Hmm.
you do have a hard time if you don't let your emotions out, like they will show up in other ways and usually not in the way you want.
Right.
Um,
Okay. So I wanted to actually I have two things I want to go on. One, you said it was kind of weird, and that was one of the first descriptions that you gave for it, but I wasn't sure, were you referring to like what it was in early life, with what made it weird before you went on the mission trip, or are you talking about all the other things you just talked about with like the toxic perfectionism and inability to have like adult conversations about sex and so on?
so the weirdness, Sorry, I didn't finish that story. I go on a lot of
Oh, okay.
tangent.
Okay, go for it. Finish that story.
We'll start with the mission. Radicalized. Halfway through my mission, one of my companions showed me a talk called "Quick to Observe" by Elder Bednar, and in it he talks about like how you can have the spirit of discernment and like gifts of prophecy. Pretty much, you can have spiritual gifts,
Right.
which like from my perspective at the time, that meant I could have superpowers and like read people's minds.
Right,
Like,
which would be pretty great.
yeah, which is great. And like that's where I became radicalized. Like, yeah, I want to like follow all the mission rules. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be more diligent and like following all that
If you're
stuff and like
diligent
actually,
enough, yeah, if you're diligent enough, you'll become an X-Men.
yeah, pretty much. And like I could read people's minds, and it's like I remember one time, like, and I didn't think about it. Someone else told me like, so you pretty much believe you could have superpowers of like reading minds, and I was like, yeah, I guess I could. And it's just like that is where I became radicalized of just like
Was that just the
Tom
superpower
Cruise, Scientology.
was that the superpower you just really wish you had? Like I think we all had like
Yeah.
the superpower we all wanted between flying or laser vision and things like that. But you wanted to read minds. Like, did you just not understand people, so you want to be able to read their mind, or did you just want to? Where are you going with that?
No, so like in the talk, Quick to Observe, it lays out like the spiritual gifts you can have, and like reading minds is one of them.
Oh, it's
So
just
like I wouldn't
there.
like be able to fly because like you could only have spiritual gifts if it's in God's will.
Right.
Um, and I no longer believe in God, so it's like, well, if I'm good enough, then like God will let me read people's minds so I can help Him, and like I can be a really good missionary and like just
Right.
have that awesome power and like be such a good person and use it for good. But it's
Right.
like it is weird saying it out loud, and I am like, yeah, but that's like honestly what I believed. It was just like
Yeah.
I could read people's minds and it'd be great,
Yeah.
and help them like discern what they would need and be like, this is how the gospel would apply to your life.
Hmm.
This is what I could give specific messages of the gospel to them
Right.
instead of just knocking doors all day.
Yeah, I end up thinking about just having Socratic dialogue with people because that's currently what I'm really obsessed with. Is talking to people in a line of questioning to actually help them unravel their brain and why they believe what they believe. And I think that's like the closest you can get to like reading someone's mind, but it is much more of just having a conversation where you're asking more questions than giving answers. Um, so,
Yeah.
alrighty, okay, so you grow up in the Maryland side of the world, and you do your mission trip sort of out of Maryland into where were you? Were you
I went to St. Louis, Missouri,
Okay.
around the time of Ferguson riots.
Oh, fun. Oh wow. Like how old are you? How old are you right now?
I am 29 and a half.
Okay. So yeah, like 8 years ago. Yeah, I guess that would that
Yeah.
it's all blurred together, all that timeline with all that crazy political cultural crap. But
Yeah, 14 to 16. 2014 and 16 is when I did my mission.
okay. I have a few things that happened in my life then. Okay, interesting. Um,
Yeah.
so you grow up in Maryland, you go on your mission trip to St. Louis and sort of run that round of experience for those 2 years. And at what point, because then do you go back home to Maryland and then move out to Utah? When was that transition sort of occurring?
Yeah, so shortly after I got home from my mission, I went to BYU, Idaho for school. It is a different place. Um,
Is that when you started getting the version of Mormonism that's much more Utah-like and has its very
yeah,
distinct flavor compared to East Coast Mormonism as you were describing it?
yeah, it's like people are like casually racist, like not intentionally, just like you're like very well spoken for like a black person, or like very well spoken for an African, or like, oh, I didn't know they had this kind of stuff, and I didn't know they had like computers in Africa or where you're from, like things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I didn't see a lot of it because a there's not a lot of like diversity at BYU Idaho.
Right.
Like there's one or two instances I'm like, whoa, like okay, that's kind of offensive, but whatever.
Right.
Um, and like I was very diligent because I was trying to get those superpowers. I'd read my scriptures every day for like an hour. pray, do all that good stuff. Go to the temple like once a week or once a week when I first got back. And they really emphasized getting married right after the mission. So I set like goals to go on a date like every week. It didn't matter who, just like checking a box.
Right.
And that was bad times for probably a lot of women. And I'm like, I'm sorry, man.
Are you a bad date or what? Like, or were you just so dry of a personality because you were treating it like work or what? Like, what made you as Mormon Dennis such a horrible dater? Because you're framing it that way, and I have a
And
hard.
that's accurate. um, it's more of like, so I just like, I'm awkwardly outgoing is how I describe it. So it's like,
Nothing.
hey,
So nothing's changed. Nothing's changed in that
yeah,
regard.
yeah, pretty much. Like, honestly, God, like I'm still awkwardly outgoing. I've just like contained it a little better, or like know how to work with it instead of against it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, hey, you're attractive. You want to go on a date? It's like I'm trying to get this box done, or like I just need to go on a date once a week.
And that's how
And
you
it's
at
just
least
like,
that's at least how you had it in your head. It's like, let me get this box done, let me go have a date, and so you I would like to think you would not explain like I need to check a box. Would you? And you're attractive.
yeah, I wouldn't say that part,
Yeah.
obviously, but it's like in my head, that's pretty much what I was thinking, and it's just like I don't really know this person, and I don't know if I care to. Also, I have homework, and I'm like, this probably isn't great for anyone.
So, and were you thinking that during the dates or like as you were going between dates? Because I'm very curious. Like, were you just going to movies or going to have meals or coffee with these girls, but not really being able to like
Didn't do
engage?
coffee because Mormon.
Oh yeah,
Um,
no caffeine. Right.
yeah. Oh, they can do. Oh, that's another weird thing. In Mormonism, like some people are like caffeine's okay, but coffee isn't, or like black tea is not okay, or green tea. But like drinking as much Coke as you want is okay. Or Mountain Dew. My dad was a big fan. Um, but back to your other question. It's like
Yeah.
usually just to get food because everyone needs to eat. At one point, uh, I just try to schedule as many dates in one day. So like an hour and a half apart or like 2 hours.
Right.
We'd go to my apartment. I'd have ice cream cones and like a bucket of ice cream. Do some scoops and like just walk around the park.
That's
And
actually
I feel
super, like those logistical elements, that's actually like super sweet. Like
yeah, and
that's
it's like
actually
it's
like
great.
mint. Yeah, go ahead.
Like save money, go on a walk. It's like do a lap or two or however many you want if it's going well. Like
Yeah.
I will see you later or we won't. Um, and it's just like everyone and you get ice cream, so
Yeah.
at least you got something.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's just a very awkward dude, and just like, why am I doing this? I don't really care, and I don't know if I'm like,
Like and like none of those dates really stuck out to you, did they?
yeah. Um, and I wasn't really sure what. So I was just doing the dates to get the dates, and I wasn't like really sure what was the end goal. It's like I didn't really know if I wanted to get married or not,
Right.
and like in Mormonism, you can't have sex if you're not married. So it's like, of course I wanted sex, but it's like I didn't want, or I wasn't sure. Like I don't know if I want kids, or like at one point I was like, yeah, I want kids, but I was just like, I'm not sure how to do like a healthy relationship.
Right. Like, did you not feel like your parents gave you a good model for a healthy relationship, or were you just, did you feel like you were just out in the water without even a life raft or swim trunks? Like,
Um, I don't know. It's like my dad will brag about how good a relationship he has, but it's like my mom is very codependent and like just babies him, and he's not even aware of that. So it's very
oh,
one-sided.
hmm,
And so when I did get married, I was pretty much like my mom in that relationship. I was just like, it's very one-sided. It's like I'm doing all the work,
right.
and like whoever cares the less in a relationship controls it, and like it's yeah.
It's like a gaslighty thing in a way, like a
Mm-hmm.
manipulative piece there. Okay, so now did this ice cream walking around the park strategy like actually get you into a marriage while you were at BYU Idaho, or how did? So okay, so you're kind of going through the dating. Not really
I
sure.
had a rough time getting to a second date or wanting to go to on a second date with people.
Was that more you or more them? Like I feel like there
Me.
was, yeah, like you just were
Like
never
there are a lot of
interested.
cool people. It's just like I'm just like I don't know. I'm just good.
Were you just like probably? It's a weird way to phrase it, but like, were you happily single at that time, or were you just without clear
No,
aim to progress into a real like you? Because I think you've said it, but you didn't know how to have a relationship, so you didn't even know how to like identify the factors that would say I like this person to do the second date. Like they can be cute all day, they can be sexy, attractive, whatever variant they that sprouts out of them, but you just had no ability to even figure out like what did am I guessing that right? You had no metrics with which to identify like I'd like a second date with this person, like progress here this way somehow. Like
it's something I still think about, and like still can't get it past the first date or want to, oftentimes. And I think uh, part of it, not all of it, is like I'm fear of success. Like on the mission, I love knocking doors because most people are like not interested, and it's like cool. Then you go on. But when someone's like, "Yeah, I'm interested. Let's hear what you have to say," I'm like, okay.
oh, you're
I
the
never actually
oh
taught a
my
lesson before.
you're the anti-salesman. Like
Yeah.
you are prepared for no's over and over again, but the moment you get a yes, like, oh no, I might make money today. Like,
Like, because like you're just there for the 2 years, no matter what.
yeah,
It doesn't
so
matter if I get 50 baptisms in a week, or which would never happen, by the way,
yeah,
for me at least. I'm not that charismatic, but it's like it doesn't matter. You're still here for the 2 years, and teaching a lesson's cool and all, but it's like on the mission at least, it's like 90% of the time I didn't believe in what I was saying, and it's like at least for the first half. But like even then, it's like I don't really know anything about tithing because I'm like 20 and I've paid
yeah,
like maybe $50 or something.
right. So but now remind me, you said you got radicalized while you were on this mission trip?
Yeah,
Yeah, so and that was in the second half, the second year of the mission trip, like something just captivated you, like the superpower offer captivated you and had you just buy into
yep,
the whole thing.
yep.
So
The
okay,
superpowers.
mind reading turns, and so did you start selling the religion more fervently or with any amount of fervor after that, or were you still just a happily receiving a nose kind of salesman?
I was still more I was more confident, but I
Okay.
was still like I felt weird testifying of things I wasn't sure about. Like, um, I'm like I don't know what the benefits of this are because I don't know anything else. So like this person was struggling with I don't know, like paying tithing,
Hmm.
probably the most common. It's like
Okay,
uh
so could you I feel like I want to make sure I have this clear. So you said
yeah.
pain tithing?
So tithing is 10% of all your income.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know. I remember that for what traditional tithing is. Why do you say, or are you saying paying tithing or pain with an N?
Uh
Like, is there types of,
PAYNING.
okay, paying
Like
tithing.
giving it to the church.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. 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 I thought there was a weird difference there. I missed
No,
that.
no,
So,
you're good.
so they were struggling with tithing, but you didn't know how to relate to that. So your ability to like you could,
Testify or
yeah.
like, yes, this will change your life. And
Yeah.
like I don't have an example in my life where like tithing helped me and it's like and I still don't.
Right.
Um
Are you an evidence-based thinker? Like kind of in self-reflecting at this age after everything?
yeah, it's like I kind of just returned to my roots when I think about it. Like I remember as a kid, around 10 to 13ish, I remember being like, I don't really believe in God. And like I told my brother and he told my parents and I got in trouble and I was just like, fine, I guess I'll believe in God. Like this is some bullshit.
Fine, I'll believe. Like,
And I
uh,
was like trying to think of reasons why. Because like I remember there was one smart dude in my ward, and I like my congregation,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, well, he believes, and I don't think he's stupid, so like maybe it's true. I don't know. And I was just like pacified, and like I saw church growing up as like a very social thing, like to hang out with your friends. And
Yeah,
like, yeah,
yeah.
there's some dude talking about like Jesus or whatever, but I don't care. It's like I'm here to chill with my bros, the
Right.
homies.
Okay. Okay.
So it's like church was not important, but the social gathering was,
Yeah.
which is also like something that kind of contributed to me leaving and or like the figuring out like the weird culture of Utah or like the West.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's still keep it on the timeline. So you did 2 years. You went out to BYU, Idaho. You were dating, but you didn't get your marriage there, is what you said so far. Now, did you complete all of your studies? Like, did you get your bachelor's or associates or whatever from BYU, Idaho? Is that where you got de-radicalized and like broke away? Like,
No.
what sort of happened at BYU, Idaho as a whole?
So it's like my experience at BYU Idaho was great. Like I
Mm-hmm.
love. It's like sometimes when I go back to the campus, I'm just like, I love this place because I did have a good time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like I
yeah.
could never go back
Mm-hmm.
um, for a lot of reasons, but like uh, I felt like a good community because it's big enough you can explore options, but small enough that you can have like good connections with your community or ward.
Mm-hmm.
Or small enough to have a good community and ward, but big enough to like explore other people or options.
Yeah, like there's several communities inside of there, pretty much. Like,
Yeah.
you know. Okay, so
Um,
yeah,
then I
what? Go ahead, go ahead.
yeah. So I met my wife like my last semester at BYU Idaho.
Okay.
She had been dating some really cute tall dude. I think his name was Tim. Um, and she was attractive. But I was like, oh, she has a boyfriend, and like in my mind, it's just like a switch of like boyfriend, no boyfriend. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
boyfriend, don't go for it. But like she went for a hike one time, and my roommate snored really, really loud. Like so loud, like I'd wake up in the middle of the night and just be like, I can't go back to sleep. So I just like go to the rec center and go swimming, or then go shopping or something. So I bought like a fruit punch Gatorade, and left her on her doorstep that said, are you, what is it? It's like, are you a fruit punch? No. Yeah, it's like, are you a fruit punch? Because you're a knockout. And it's very cute and cheesy. And I did a lot of cute, cheesy things while dating. Uh, but I'm like, maybe that's a little strong on the first date, but whatever.
Well, and were you
And
doing
like,
this with her like did you become aware that she broke up with him, or were you just like shooting a shot while that switch was in the off position?
so leaving that Gatorade was not shooting a shot. That was just
That's
like,
just you being silly, like
yeah, it was just like,
in a wholesome,
this
jokey
is
way,
funny.
right?
Yeah, I just thought it was funny.
Right.
And like, yeah, they'll probably appreciate it. Um, because I did use that joke a few times on people because it's a great joke. It's wholesome.
Yeah.
Um, and then she's like, I knew at that point that I was like, oh, I am attracted to this dude. And her boyfriend was going to BYU Provo in Utah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a 4-hour commute. And so they eventually broke up. And my brother was getting married. And at some point, I was like, I should ask her out. And then I did, and she was just like, "Yeah, let's do it." And it progressed, and like because I was very, very Mormon, I was like, "We're not going to kiss for like a month,
Right.
or like be physical at all." Which again, um, but yeah, did that, and so I was leaving the semester if I passed all my classes, which I barely did.
Right.
Um, and I had internships lined up in Utah, so I went out Utah after the semester. But like before I left, she's like, "You're not going to get anything better out there, so you may as well propose." And like she was kind of weirdly forceful about it. And
Yeah, that's a really forceful line because I feel like you could be paraphrasing that term like, look, I'm a big deal.
I am paraphrasing,
Yeah, I
but
know,
it's
but
like,
like still, like the forcefulness is kind of coming through in the storytelling a little bit here. Like, so she's like, "Marry me."
yeah. And it's like I didn't want to get married to her. And like
How long were you all
there's a
dating at
lot
this
of
point?
time.
Because you said you met her, you started dating her or meeting her pretty much in the last semester, the last what's that, 4 months
Yeah, or
of
so, or like 3-ish.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Because we're on tri-semesters in BYUI.
okay, so yeah, it'd be like 3 months or less. Um,
Yep.
so but yeah, you've been dating for less than half a year. And then you're about to graduate, right? And
Oh,
then
so yeah,
or
go
are you
ahead.
were you graduating? Were you just transferring down to Provo?
Uh, I wasn't transferring. I was going to do internships. I need my internships to graduate.
Right, right.
Um, so this is part of the weird Mormon culture of like, since you can't have sex before marriage, you have to get married to have sex. And like, so like a 3-month engagement or like 3 months and you're engaged or getting married
Mm-hmm.
within 8 months is pretty common.
Inside of the
And guess what else is
Mormon
common?
what?
Divorce. Because of that, it's like they're very correlated, unsurprisingly.
Right.
Um, so it's just, yeah, that's like the MO. And she's like, I was gonna marry the Tim dude, but like probably the same amount of time. Maybe knew him longer. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, she used to pretty much like get married or else. And or, like at the time, I didn't know how to say no to people, but I didn't want it. I didn't want to go through with it. And like looking at my journal, I've kept a journal for like 9-ish years, 8 years
Nice.
since 2014. So yeah, 10 years almost.
Yeah.
Um, I was just like, I don't really feel good about this marriage. And like even when we were printing wedding invitations, my brother made them for me, which is very nice. And I was like, hey, like hold off on printing those because I'm not sure if I want to do this. And I had many talks of like, hey, I'm not really sure if I want to do this. And
But
like she'd get what?
were you just not listened to, or what? How do you actually sort of feel that was sort of framed? Because it sounds like you voiced it a few times, but
Yes. Um, like I did voice it, and like it was never met with felt like I was listened to, or it was like it'll be fine, don't worry about it. Brushed off.
by everyone.
Mostly her, because that's I think I only really voiced it to her, maybe one or two of my brothers,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just like, "Yeah, man, kind of quick," and I was just like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I don't know what to do."
Oh, okay.
Uh, so it's like my main like consulting the poison to be like, "Hey, are you poison?" It's like, "No, no, man, we're cool."
Oh gosh.
Uh, no, no, this arsenic, totally good. Good for
Quality.
you.
Quality.
Yeah. It's like I have a joke about it. It's like my marriage was a lot like the Berlin Wall.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as it fell apart, my finances were better, and I was no longer cut off from the rest of the world. Um,
That's a fantastic, like, I don't know if you've ever adapted that into a joke, but that's already a great metaphorical, like, punchline piece right there. It's like, much like just ready to, oh, it's like, oh, I can pay for things now. So how long then, you were doing your internships. Did you end up finishing up and sort of graduating or whatnot from BYU altogether?
yep.
So you got that done. Now, did you get married like after you got graduated?
Yeah, pretty much like the week
Yeah,
after or something.
right.
I
And
got
then
married on 4/20, 2019.
blessings. That's funnier in hindsight than it is probably at the time.
Yeah, so it's like as a kid growing up, I had a weird obsession with Hitler. Just like Hitler's obviously a terrible human being, but as a child, I was like, but like he got the power somehow, and it's like he's a really good orator.
Yep.
So it's like he's very convincing. Um, and Hitler's birthday is on 4/20,
Yep.
and so I thought it'd be funny to get married on 4/20, but it's like also 4/20 blaze it. Um,
And did you know that at the time? Like I
oh
figure,
yeah, I deliberately chose the 4/20.
you were just kind of burning down everything around this soon to be marriage. Like as you got to did she even know that those two reasons why 420
Oh
was
yeah,
gonna?
I told her.
Okay, and she
But
she
yeah,
she was just about getting married and fuck the rest, pretty much.
yeah, and it was very apparent. She was, yeah. Like I met her dad, and like her dad scares the hell out of me. He's one of the few people I've met, and I was just like, yo, like what the hell's wrong with you? A perfect case of it is like one time we were just chilling, and I went to her place to like meet the family and stuff. And like everyone was having a good time talking, and like the dad walks in, and like everyone shuts the fuck up. I'm just like, yo, like that is not normal. That is
Yeah.
not okay. And I was just like, something's not right about this dude.
No,
Um,
that's scary.
and it's weird because like his voice, he doesn't look like a threatening dude. He's like a tall, lanky dude.
Mm-hmm.
And like, are you familiar with the Archie comics?
I think yes. Let me do a
It's
quick.
like Moose from Archie
Let me see
is
here.
who.
Archie Comics.
Yeah, I'm sure you can pull up a
I just need a
picture
little
or
image.
something.
Yes, that ginger-haired, skinny, tall. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, so Moose, like the big dumb
Hmm.
guy,
Okay.
her dad is what I imagine Moose would sound like.
Just like a really deep voice or something like that. Like we
Yeah,
talked.
deep voice and kind of like a comical deep voice. I don't know how to describe it, but it's just like,
Was
oh, I'm this guy. Kind of like Rocky Bowinkle, but like
right.
more
Yeah. Just
stupid.
just really bring up the bass and lower the treble kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But like the guy scares me, and like the voice does not match.
Yeah, I could understand that. It's kind of like Spencer a bit because Spencer's like a tall, lanky dude, and you eventually you get used to like that's his voice, but maybe initially you're like, oh, this guy has got like he's got four sets of balls that dropped like on his way up, like something happened here.
Not quite like that, but like
But more comical as it relates to like
comical.
yeah, the more
Yeah,
comical part. Yeah, nothing about Spencer's like voice is innately funny. Not
yeah.
like what you're describing with your father-in-law for the time. So get married. Was it a big wedding, small wedding, anything like that? Because I think the next real question is just how long were you married?
I was married too long. Because
I
again,
think
didn't
every
want to.
husband will say that. I think every husband will say this. I need a
Yeah, it was about a year, a little over a year.
okay.
Like right around my birthday is when we got divorced officially.
Did y'all buy
Um,
property or anything? Like
I don't know. We're like poor college students. She did buy a dog with the 2020 stimulus check, and like we weren't allowed to have a dog. And I was like, bro, we can't afford a dog. Like we should not get a dog. And she's like, cool. Well, I'm gonna go get a dog. You can come with me or not. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck?
yeah, she got a COVID dog. Okay,
Yeah, she
interesting.
still has that dog. But
Poor
she
dog.
never like took care of it or like trained it or anything.
Oh God, it's just a hellion of a dog. I bet. Okay, so
Yeah,
you guys were married a year or less. It sounds like.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you divorced. Like, what year do you divorce at this point?
2020,
The
year
2020.
later.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're 4 years now, pretty much single. So what happened for the next 4 years after that? Because like you never left
Um,
Utah. It sounds like.
yeah, correct. After the internships, I just found some jobs. And none of them were very good, and they did not train well. Fought Goldman Sachs with a knife. They should burn in hell, as pretty much 90% of banking industries, because they're just there to get the rich richer and fuck over everyone else.
Did you have like a finance degree or something?
No, I did supply chain. I did business management
Okay.
because nothing else worked for me. And even then, so yeah, got divorced. I lived with my brothers for a little bit, and like went to therapy and like kind of had to reanalyze all my life.
Okay.
And just like, cool. So like, why did this happen? Like, I didn't want this. It's like I didn't want to get married. So like, how did that get there? And it's like, kind of learned. I have learned helplessness and like was not good at setting boundaries or like saying no to people. And like, I've gotten better. Um, and just like had to reanalyze church stuff because I'm like, dude, I am getting fuck all from this. I am getting nothing from church,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely nothing, and like that kind of sucked. Um, and just like yeah, church was not doing it, and like the community I couldn't get into. I mean, I still play the organ on Sundays, uh, because I like playing the organ, and where else am I going to get a bunch of people to sing while I play?
Yeah.
So I don't tell my congregation slash ward, and yeah, just like there's no one thing that set me off for like the church and religion for me being false, or like
Mm-hmm.
it's just not true. One of my favorite jokes to tell is like there's a lot of problems in the church, but it's like I think it's a shame Joseph Smith died at such a young age that he couldn't celebrate his wife's sweet 16. He
Uh,
married her. He married a few 14-year-olds.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
It
and
just sounds like for you it was like a slow peeling of like a sticker. Like you see something peeled and there's a bunch of little strands of like the adhesive.
yeah,
Like it seems like that's kind of what it was, and each of those little strands is just this little a million little microcosms of just you just kind of separating from the church and the belief system. It sounds like. Um,
yeah, and like
so
just didn't
do you hang out
work.
in more in an agnostic or atheistic area now? Not to like heavily label you or anything. It's just sort of like where
Yeah,
you.
it's like I'd consider myself an atheist, but it's like to be in it. It's like the catch-22. It's like to know there is no God, you would have to be a god. Um,
Yeah,
and it's
I can
like
get that.
for a realistic day-to-day practicum, it's like atheism. It's like this is it. This is all we have. Like kind of morbid thought I had. Like if nothing in life really matters, like we could nuke the entire Earth, and like ultimately wouldn't matter at all. I mean, it'd matter to us because we're in
Right,
it, but
right.
it's like on a grand scheme of things, no one cares.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Kind of. It's kind of where you hang out in nihilism just long enough, and you might do something stupid, I guess.
Yeah, and it's like, and if someone wanted to do that, or like if someone with nukes wanted to bomb the shit out of everything, they could just
Yeah,
wipe out all life. We
yeah,
can't really stop them. We have the nukes.
yeah. You kind of need a little bit more purpose in your life, where the
Yeah,
nihilistic, atheistic stuff doesn't really. At least I don't very much vibe with it. Because like to sort of trade stories for a moment, like I came up with I grew up in something that was much more it was a non-denominational small like family church thing, none of that mega church stuff. Um, but it was I was coming up in a much more Baptist sort of environment, and so I kind of get the perfectionism. I get um, the kind of never good enough stuff. Um, Jesus was like the end all be all thing, and a lot of the rules that kind of come with that meant that there was a lot of restriction without a lot of like iterative education, let's say, about like how the world is. Like,
yes.
my mom bad like the first time I ever heard of 50 Cent was because my mom was bad mouthing him in like a passing phrase or something. And I was like, I don't even know who that is. Like all we've listened to in my young life was like the country music station. So I was aware of Martina McBride, Toby Keith, Tim McGraw, like those people, Faith Hill, all the country music artists that like my mom was a fan of. And then once like we both got saved on like the same day and baptized pretty close to each other, then we were over to the Christian Contemporary channel, um, listening to Phillips, Craig, and Dean, and well, I think Toby Mac had a few things back then, and all that stuff. So yeah, yeah, I get a little bit of what I'm picking up a little bit of what you're putting down. Um, I just also ended up having a lot of conflicts of faith because I was trying to have at least something to anchor on. Because I guess I just lost faith um, in my mom and in like my parents from like probably a little too early on for a growing person. Um, but yeah, cool. So You live with your brothers. The divorce has occurred. You're still in the Utah area. You try out for, um, I think you said either Charles Schwab or J.P. Morgan, one of those big financial companies. Um, doesn't take. So what sort of happens after that? Because you've kind of, it sounds like you get into the therapy to understand what was going on or what got you into a marriage that you didn't want to be in. And at that point, it's a question of like, so what sort of progresses, or what's sort of the progress from there to, I don't know, loss of faith and getting into all the things that you're sort of into now.
Yeah. And I'm not saying like don't be Christian. It's like this is just what I've done. One of the things that really did turn me off is like Christianity is about like being good to others, and it's like we have this weird like alt-right group that's like heavily Christian,
Hmm.
but like doesn't follow the practice of Jesus of like loving your neighbors and being like, if you ain't us, get fucked, kid.
Right.
And I was never a fan of that. And I feel like that is weirdly growing. It's
Hmm.
like the point of religion is to make you a better person.
Yeah.
And I just kind of felt like I'd capped out. Not that I was like the best person I could be or anything, just like I don't feel like anything new has been here.
I get that. I actually get that. I get that a lot. I didn't get a revival into valuing the Bible in any productive way for me, at least, until I started listening to Jordan Peterson's lecture series on Genesis. But back to you, real quick. Back to you for
Yeah.
so. So you sort of you run out of maxing out what value you can extract from the Bible, from the Mormon teachings and stuff. And so what
Book
sort of
one,
happens?
yeah.
Yeah. So what sort of happens there with therapy and still playing the organ, and it sounds like going to church on Sundays or whatnot, but what do you end up doing from there?
Yeah. Eventually I get a job with Fort Longyear through a friend who recommended me. Move out with my brothers. Um, and like again, it's just like that slow burn of like religious
Hmm.
stuff, like therapies. Like I hand out books about therapy. Adult Children of the Emotionally Immature Parents is really like what stuck to me the most. There's also a free PDF of it on
Was that
the
adult
internet.
parents are what?
Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents by Lindsay C. Gibson.
Let me actually Google this. By adult children of emotional parents, right? By
Emotionally Immature
emotionally immature.
Parents. Yeah.
Yeah, by who was her name?
Lindsay C. Gibson.
ZC Gibson. Okay, that sounds like that'd be interesting.
And she also has a follow up of
Hmm.
recovering from adult children of the emotionally mature parents. They're very similar. There's a lot of overlap, but like one is identifying, and the other is like, okay, well now you're aware of the problem. This is kind of what you can do.
Like the first one
Uh,
extracts it out, and the second book kind of gives you a progression forward after you've reckoned with those issues.
yeah.
Okay, cool.
Um,
Did you have anything from
so that
those?
was
Did you have anything from the first or second book that really stuck out for you in terms of self application?
yeah. It's like my parents were very passive. They were very supportive. They were very supportive of everything I did.
Mm-hmm.
They were just very passive when it came to emotional support that I wanted, or like, and like that's fine. Or like being the youngest, I kind of felt like a back burner child.
Right.
Um, and it's like nothing against my parents, it's just like they have four other kids they need to deal with. And by the time like my parents had bandwidth to help me, I was an angsty teenager and didn't want their help.
Right. Right. Right.
Um, so it was just a bad time. Um, but like yeah, and like just kind of being bullied as a kid, it's like and not being able to like do anything about it. It's like just learned helplessness.
Yeah.
Um, like I said, and working more to overcome that. and just like I don't have to follow the path of religion. Um, and just trying to figure out what it means that like if there is no God, well now it's like the nihilism is a very apparent.
Hmm.
Like, but it's like you don't want to live a life of nihilism. That's how you end up like killing yourself or like
Yeah.
ODing or something like that. Well, but
Okay, so you go through the therapy, you go through some of these. I feel like some of these books were recommended or you discovered, right?
yeah,
Right. Um, so you're going through that therapy. What I'm kind of driving at, like, what gets you towards? Because I know one of your hobbies is baking. I don't know if that's still like the work that
yeah,
you do, but like you like doing somewhat artistic baking or just simple creative
keep
baking.
decorating.
Yeah, cake decorating. And the other thing is that, of course, where we met was
Stand up.
through comedy and everything.
Yeah,
Did you say Santa? What did I just hear you say?
stand up.
Stand up, right, right. They said Santa,
Yeah.
and I was like, I neither of us have been elves, but keep going. Um,
Uh, you haven't been in health. Um, so yeah, sorry, I'm very rambly. Just draw me back to what you want to talk about.
that's the whole thing. That's the whole
Um,
thing. Like,
yeah. So I got into stand up. So I was living with my brother and like working a little bit,
hmm,
just doing in between jobs, and I was just shit posting a lot on Reddit. One of my favorite subreddits is Shitty Life Pro Tips, and I had a few good ones. Um, like during the pandemic, one of my favorite ones I posted was like think you might have COVID, or it's like you got your COVID test back, gather the whole gang to reveal the results,
right,
stuff like that. And I was like, oh, I have like enough one-liners or like random thoughts. Like growing up, I'd always have random thoughts when I'm trying to go to sleep or like just have quiet moments.
hmm,
And I just started writing more and more down. And I was like, I could do this on stage, maybe. And I did Wise Guys and like finally got up on stage and just started doing it. And to answer your cake decorating questions, in college, because I was trying to like make a good community and like I like people and I want to celebrate their life, so I'd make
right,
a cake for their birthday. And as a college student, it's like you just have a butter knife and a can of frosting from the store. Uh, and I would try to write happy birthday and like sprinkles or something, and it'd look like really shitty, looked
right.
really awful. Um, and one of my friends bought me a cake decorating kit on my birthday so I could pipe it and like actually frost it and just kind of progress from there.
All right, that's pretty awesome that you got such because we're going back to like we're just getting constant reminders of what a wholesome piece of shit you are. Because you're just like it's other people's birthday. I'm gonna make designer cakes for them with like my amateur college kid abilities, and then it sounds like you finally got like a present that like at least landed really home for what like you were already because it sounds like you really enjoy doing the decorating and stuff.
Yeah, it was probably like one of the best thoughtful gifts. And then it was probably like only $15 or something. It's
No,
from
no,
like
no. One of my best gifts I ever got was literally like a box of honey buns from my roommate because it was kind of an inside joke because I was clearly obsessed with honey buns. You know, like just the regular like six pack of Little Debbie's because they saw I ate like one or two a day and I raged at League of Legends and I love sassy humor. So they got me like a $20 gift card that would go to my League of Legends account. They got me the box of honey buns and they got me this like sassy black woman like gift like birthday card or whatnot that just like told me off or whatever and it's still one of my favorite gifts like to this day. So yeah, I think we agree on it, but I don't need you to
yeah,
belabor the part where like the dollar amount doesn't mount the preciseness of execution of quality of gift is pretty unparalleled
yeah,
in the human experience. I don't know what dogs think, but you know.
yeah.
Oh,
Very
so
accurate.
so in the comedy area, because this is like the easiest thing to sort of jump into, is Were you aware of like stand up and such as like an art form, or what was like comedy for you like back in like your like young childhood or family and Mormon and all of that? Because like, so speaking as someone who like did a lot of work around Mormons when I was working pest control for a few months in Utah, most of the Mormons that I interacted with there were like all I had to do was like put on like my old school Christian filter, and I could still be the same witty version of myself. So there's just no cussing, but there's still the same like
Yep.
witticism that came around it. So and unless I was dealing with a very high strong personality, like a super stressed mom or something, usually they were of good humor in the Salt Lake area. So I'm kind of
I
curious,
believe
like,
it.
what was sort of your what was sort of your like introduction to comedy in general, whether it was, you know, like comedy movies, skits like SNL stuff or otherwise?
Um, I like a model I had, or like just was it relevant to my life?
I don't know, something that sort of inspired you. Like here, I'll throw down like me. So I was unaware of stand-up comedy as like an art form of any kind. Like I think growing up, I was aware of like the music, people on the radio or whatever. When you think of having a life as like an artist of any kind, you're thinking of those people that do like painting and stuff. Um, and I had no idea where sort of that script writers or anything like that was a thing. I'd done like some like school plays, but I wasn't aware of sort of, let's say, stand up um, as an art form in any meaning of the word until
Mm,
the blue collar comedy tour came out when I was like in early middle school. Um, which I'd have to like do some math to figure that out. So I was like in sixth or seventh grade when my uncle showed up to the property up in North Florida that my family has or whatnot. And we put it on and we watched like all four of those comics: Jeff Foxworthy, Larry the Cable Guy, Bill Engvall, and Ron White. Just watched that whole special, and I damn near memorized that thing. Um, and so that was my
thank,
first introduction to at least stand up comedy as an art. I'd randomly see things on TV, like maybe SNL or something. But since my parents weren't really deep into modern culture in any way, I've only had to learn about like the Dana Carvey show or SNL or stuff like in going looking backwards. I've always struggled being with like the zeitgeist as it is in the present day, and I've always had to look backwards at what the zeitgeist was like in my youth, if that makes sense. So it goes from
yeah,
like so for me it goes from blue collar comedy tours the first time I see stand up like at all, and barely understanding like that it's a rehearsed art form rather than like an improvised art form, like it appears to be an improvised off the cuff art form. And then my next major influence I would say is Christopher Titus's special The Norman Rockwell is Bleeding. um and then another favorite is like Pimp Chronicles Part 2 by like Cat Williams. um and so those were all sort of like the influences and the things in Comedy Central in general at that time, because I graduated high school like in 2010. So 2010, back like 4 years, is all of the comedy that I was intaking off of the TV, and really getting, really at least having those influences. And I loved Eddie Murphy and Robin Williams inside of their movies. So it's kind of one of those like I knew I was funny from a young age. I loved funny things. Um, and I just kept, and at least for me, for most of my adult life, especially once I guess realized that there was a way to get into it with local open mics, um, by understanding that through Joe Rogan and such with the podcasts. Um, that's kind of at least been that's informed how I've gotten to at least where I've gotten to for I don't know, just finding open mics, going to them, and building out a craft, if you will. So I'm kind of curious, like how, because it sounds like you started at least being, a shit poster on Reddit, but did you just know to go to Wise Guys? Like, had you been to like live comedy performances or anything like that? Or
um, no. It's like I've always been aware of stand-up comedy in some form. Um, and I think my dad actually encouraged me. Like I tried to do a talent show in high school, and my dad's like, "You should do stand-up." And I tried to write something. And I was like, "This is garbage. I'm gonna do something else."
right,
Uh, and I always loved memes and being funny.
right,
In third grade, I was voted one of the funniest kids in my class. if I remembered correctly.
Congratulations.
And yeah, I don't know, just like always had a string of consciousness of like trying to make things funny. It's a
Yeah.
free coping mechanism. Why not use it?
My mom kind of badgered me one time is like stop making things funny because they're like serious or tragic or whatever, and I'm just like, this is all I have. Like this is all I can do. Like
Yeah, it's like, well, it's a shitty situation. Like,
yeah.
sorry, I
Sorry,
can't control that.
sorry that I cope with chuckles and you just keep crying, mom. One of us is clearly having a better time here. So
Yeah.
okay, so you at least got it. Just sounds like it was always on your radar, or you were aware of it as an art form, something like
Just
that. Because
never thought I'd be doing it, I guess.
right,
Like I love the stage, and it's like I do miss theater and stuff, but it's like as an adult you don't have as much time,
mm-hmm.
so it's like, oh, I can do 3 minutes for sure.
Yeah,
And I just googled like open mics near me, and I found Wise Guys because they are a very strong presence in Utah.
yeah. They're also the only consistent open mic situation that's lasted for 10 years, let's say. Even though I have no idea when they started, but I know I know both from Central Florida, Orlando, and Salt Lake that internet searches don't do very well for helping you find open mics. You're kind of better off going to like the local comedy club, finding the
Yep.
comics there, and then helping them track you down to where all these little open mics are that no one for some reason like no article is going to be able to really capture them very easily on the internet.
Yeah, and
Or
it's always changing.
yeah, exactly. So, do you remember sort of like your first, like what year was that you first got on it? Because that makes it sound like you're a part of like the Chuck Fury sort of generation. Because Chuck got started pretty much
Yeah,
after the like right when the pandemic ended. But Chuck told me even on the podcast he started getting consistent in like 9 months or 18 months or something like that after the club reopened because Utah, like Florida, closed down for like 2 weeks and then kind of just stayed open again. It didn't do any of the extra closing down stuff that like New York and California did. So Chuck got as I was realizing this, and this is why I have probably an excessive romanticism about the Salt Lake scene. I'm realizing because my wife and I moved to Salt Lake like December 2020. So, and I went like a handful of times inside of the last 3 years before this past June, July of 2023. I went a handful of times to the Wednesday or Tuesday night open mics to like try my hand at it, but all I'm sort of driving at is that like there's a generation that started like right after the pandemic, and is that when you sort of started as well, or were you like pre-pandemic?
no. I think around Chuck Fury, I know Angel Gomez is probably the closest time frame.
Mm-hmm.
I think he started. I think we started around like August 2021,
Okay.
somewhere around there, maybe June. It was in summertime. I
Right.
remember that.
Right.
Um, yeah, that sounds right. I think Chuck had been doing it like a few months before I had.
Right.
I definitely came in after him. I know that.
Okay. Alrighty. Because I feel like I had seen you. Dennis McMenace is such a fully catchy name that
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I saw you several times on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. Um,
yeah. I was originally Dennis the Menace, but like I looked into it and it was like copyright. It's like if I went on stage and said I was Harry Potter,
yeah, exactly.
like
Yeah.
maybe not the best.
I learned
Should change
today.
that.
I learned today because I've been listening to the Cat Williams on the Shannon Sharp's podcast, the Shay Shay Show or whatever. That Cat Williams' original name was like Cat in the Hat, and then when he was not even making like 30 grand annually as a performer, like Disney like cinema ceased and desist, so he just had to change the Cat Williams. So okay.
Yeah,
Now, do you remember your first set or anything like that? Do you remember how that first set or those early days how it went?
they were awful. I do remember things I used to do. It's like I don't remember my first set, except I was very nervous, and I had two Mormon friends come in,
Uh huh.
and I think it was Greg who does Comedy Church. I'm not
Right.
sure,
Yeah.
but him or someone was dropping like a ton of F bombs, and they're like, "Just call us when you're up or on deck." and they just left the club and were like, "We'll come back for you." Um, and one of the things I used to do a lot was I used to like sway on
Right.
stage, and it was very distracting watching like old videos I have.
Mm-hmm.
And Benjamin Button, or not Benjamin Button, Benjamin Brown, King Benjamin,
Okay.
told me to like plant one of my feet in the back, and that helped tremendously to like stage presence. And something Nami told me to do is like don't say just like be quiet,
Yeah.
and like it's harder to do. But
Him and I talked about that because we both understand. He understands it more as a performer. I understand it as someone that's been studying speech and performance in general. That it's much better for you to hold silence than it is
yep.
to fill the gap nervously. Um,
Hmm.
because and as I'm saying, because people are paying attention, and that silence can get their attention. So I enjoy that Nami was the person that like gave you that bit
Got
because
good advice.
it's very good advice.
Yeah,
It's very good advice, even for conversation.
and like Chuck and EK both gave me like good tips starting out a lot
Yeah,
as well. Just like you're very fidgety,
you're very what?
which very fidgety, which was
Right.
true.
Yeah.
Like, and you talk way too fast,
Mm-hmm.
which was true. Like I do a lot of one-liners, and like you need to give time to breathe.
Yeah.
Um, and I was not. I was just steamrolling it. Even when they were laughing, I was just like, next joke.
You had not learned to sort of identify when they were at the end of their laugh to start the next joke, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I definitely appreciate them doing that. What else?
I think that almost
Yeah.
brings us. Is there any other significant like? Did you have your have you headlined at all
No, I only did
inside of
one
Salt Lake or
show.
whatnot?
I only did one show, and that was like a year and a half ago. It was August.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like the year after a full year of doing comedy at all. Um, and then I'm trying to get more. I don't feel like stand-up comedy is like my final form
Right. Right.
or
Right.
anything.
Right.
I don't know what is. So I'm trying to do sketch comedy. I did make a YouTube channel called McMenace Production,
Right.
and I just have To Catch a Missionary, which is like a satire on what it's like to be a missionary
Mm-hmm.
in the Mormon Church stateside, as well as like the weird creepiness of like the Mormon Church will like kind of groom kids to get baptized. I
Okay.
don't want to say, yeah, probably groom's the best way. Like groom them for baptism, because they'll do a lot of like part-time families
Mm-hmm.
or part-member families, and it's like, oh, you have a child who could get baptized. Let's like get them baptized so we can reactivate the whole family. And it's
Right.
just like a weird practice.
Yeah. It's
Um,
using the kids as the lure to get the whole family, pretty much.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm working on another skit right now that I'll probably work on after this. Of It's like a Dr. Seuss style of missionary interviewing.
Right.
So you need to have an interview with your bishop
Uh-huh.
and stake president before you go on a mission.
Mm-hmm.
And they like it's not as bad now, but they used to ask like a lot more invasive questions about the law of chastity, which is like not looking at porn or like not masturbating.
Right.
They used to be a lot more like, so have you done it with a goat? You done it on a boat? Like
When did you set up shop?
things like that.
Mm-hmm. Sorry. I was looking to see if
Yeah,
I could
you
find that. You said McMenace Productions?
yeah. Or you can just look up To Catch a Missionary.
That might be better. There's a lot of Menace Productions on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm sure. Or
Yeah.
maybe it's
Oh
Mr.
no, it's
McMenace.
just Dennis McMenace. There, yeah, 3 weeks ago, 331 views right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 7 minutes. Okay, so a little 7 minute clip or whatnot. Cool, awesome. Alrighty, so cool. There's that.
And
So yeah, well, one of the things I was thinking about when you were talking about how stand up is not your final form. I feel like I remember seeing you come in and doing jokes, and maybe I was also seeing someone else do other types of comedy that was much more. 'Cause it might have been you. It was at Alliance Theater at the Artistic Underground open mic at Spencer's open mic, and someone was there with a bunch of percussion stuff. Um, and I'm trying to remember if that was you or someone else, but there's always, if anything, you saying stand up's not your final form doesn't sort of surprise me because there's something about between the cake making, the joke writing that you do, how sort of intense you are about doing sort of a good job in whatever you're working on. It's sort of unsurprising that you would be sort of expanding your creativity, as it were, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And thank you for the kind words. So it's like I do a lot of one-liners, and it's like I feel like doing one-liners kind of died out. Like I know Max Bainey's really good at one-liners.
Yeah.
In the modern age, I feel like a lot of one-liners could just be a meme.
Mm-hmm.
And like I could make a lot of memes, but it's like it doesn't. I just want to make memes, or like I just want to make jokes that get the right audience, because that's kind of
Do you
how
know what the
algorithms work now as well.
yeah? What do you mean by the what do you think you mean by the right audience?
Like To Catch a Missionary is a very esoteric video,
Right.
because it does satirize like the weird life missionaries live.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you drop a Bible or a Book of Mormon, your wife will gain 10 pounds, which is a shitty thing to say and weird. But it also catches like it overemphasizes like how creepy it is missionaries are with like kids and getting them baptized just for like a baptismal number.
Right.
My brother served in the Provo, Utah mission, and he worked with a lot of kids getting them baptized. And it's
Right.
like that's just how the system's kind of set up. It's not healthy, and it's like a lot of people target kids for a lot of reasons. But it's like if you groom them for baptism, it's like what else are you grooming them for?
Yeah, it gets a
And it's
little.
like they may not have another purpose. And maybe like they just want to get them baptized, follow Jesus, which is fine. But it's like if a kid doesn't know they have a voice, or like I don't understand, or if everyone's like peer pressure, do it and you're cool.
Yeah.
That kid may have a skewed view on things. And it's like
Yeah.
peer pressure is like a way of life, religious or not.
Right. Agreed.
There just needs to be a conversation and like some practice. I did work a little bit with kids. I was going to do elementary education, but it's like it's not enough to tell your kid it's okay to say no. They have to be able to practice that as well. And like if a kid is bullying you, like what would you do? And like, okay, let's act it out. Like role playing that way does help a kid
Yeah.
tremendously. And that's why you also practice lining up for like fire drills. Because if you're like an actual fire team and you're like, let's do it like that, and everyone's just running out the door.
Yeah, I feel like it's a Navy SEAL thing or something like that, but like it's the practice that you do that means that part those practiced habits will autopilot when the
Yeah.
shit hits the fan, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
Same thing.
it's pretty much that. It's another way to think about it is like so. I've played Overwatch. I game a lot. And I played Overwatch so much that I have so many instinctual actions that I would do inside of that game that I couldn't even explain to you sort of what I'm doing. Um, Meanwhile, I'm going over and learning Counter Strike, which is a very different first person shooter for how it functions. And I have to sort of rebuild and I have to just put hours in to rebuild a very different set of habits of how to think, function, and react. And there's only and there's starting to be those little glimmering moments where I'm just instinctually acting and I'm not consciously thinking about what the next thing I'm doing. I'm sort of flowing into the cornucopia of data. Is kind of a way that I could think about it as well for just another example for people. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that sort of just rounds out like your bio, more or less, for how like everything else is gone and everything. to kind of like just because this is like sort of like my podcast, but like I reserve the option for to throw it over to you. It's like, do you know anything you wanted to know like about me at all? Anything that was sort of curious or weird or like why did you do that, man? Why did you do a roast when you haven't even been here long enough to deserve this shit? Because that Aaron Orlovitz joking from everyone has really been like chapping my ass, if you will.
I feel like you did answer that question at one point.
Well, the answer's simple. And I did answer it a few times. It's just that
Yeah.
Amanda had her birthday roast in August, and then it was like mid September or something, and the Midway owners or whoever was like, "No, we'd like more events," and so she's out on that front porch of Midway going like, "Hey, does anyone want to get roasted next?" And I'm like, "Sure." Like, and I'm also like leaving at the end of October. Like my wife and I were already very clear on that in terms of where we're at and what we're going to be doing. So it reserved the option to be a birthday thing, a going away thing, and a roast for a whole set of event stuff. So that's like that's literally the only reason. It's not that
Yeah.
like if we did like the same roast of like I know everyone wanted to do the Chuck Fury roast because he's so roastable and is like a beloved character in the scene, or if there was a roast of like Sam Duantano or Scott Fillmore came back to Salt Lake, like that would be a roast by the community for like one of their own.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me it was literally just I raised my hand and now I'm here getting shot at. That's all that's happening here.
Yeah. Did I ever show you my Chuck Fury
You
impression?
did it. You did it at the beginning of that.
Okay.
And like I used to suck dick for money. And I was listening.
Yep.
I was like, "That's actually," because I've been listening to it several times as I've been going through the edit. It's like, no, that's Chuck. That's pretty close to Chuck somehow. I don't know why his
Yeah,
voice is so high pitched, but it's still fucking him. Um,
that's true. I think it's to get the annotation, the inflection that he does.
yeah. No, that's fucking great. That's fucking great.
Yeah. Um. I think you kind of answered it already, but what's one of the nicest things someone's ever done for you?
I could actually give quite an intimate one. I just hung out with this friend recently. So so I've also been keeping a journal of sorts, um, for a while. I call it my reflection pond. Um, and so what I did for a long time, up until I got more constructive with it while I was out in Utah, is that I would just have these very circular modes of thought, typically around highly emotional things like soft trauma or something like that. And
Ruminations.
ruminations, yeah, sure, that would even be a good word for it. And so I would take them and I would have this poetic, artistic sort of title, but I would just be like puking on the page. Um, and and so I had one of those, which was sort of like my private eulogy when my mother passed in 2016. And so my friend was the only one that was of an intimate sort of closeness as a friend at the time. My roommates were not of that, and I didn't have. My wife was a good close friend at the time, but she was not there, so she was not a part of my everyday life. Um, and so my friend was able to pretty much kind of just be there by both luck and circumstance. They were already coming over weekly because we were working on early content creation ideas, podcasts, and so on. You can go if you go look up like pseudo productions. You could go look up like him killing me in Halo Reach and shit like that. And we have a historically great chemistry. But he got to basically like sort of listen or me read this eulogy that was not meant for anyone else to hear because there's a lot of there is kind of this it had the potential to be venom at everyone else but me and maybe my mom or something like that. It had one of those kind of tones that it's reading it publicly would not be of service to anyone, but it was one of those writings that's much more for you than it is for anyone else. Like it's an Abe Lincoln kind of letter. So he got to be just the one person that I got to share it with, and we both kind of cherished that moment of intimacy. And recorded he recorded like my actual like eulogist moment with a video that I made and so on in memory of my mom at the ceremony. Um, and so that was one of those like really good, sweet, um, important moments. Um, Particularly because a lot of like my life, I think, much like what you were talking about as the youngest child, I'm an only child. I got all my parents' attention, and it still wasn't enough. Um, and but there was something about how I was raised where it's like, no, I was not listened to. So getting something like that, where it's like, no, I get to sort of say this now and have someone that was there to listen to me say a thing, multiplies like the emotional weight of that moment. If to give you a good of one of things that would answer that question.
Yeah, super cool. Being
Yeah.
able to share that. Um, I want to ask like a trick question, so I'll just preface it with, uh, if if all your wishes came true, would it change the world or just yours?
Um.
So my follow up question on that is, if you had all the time and money, like infinite, whatever,
Yeah.
what would you want to do?
Um. So the first one is that it would change my world. Mostly because my current my changing everything would be in much more my psychological perspective world. If anything, it would just be the hit the button, and all the work that I do now in my journaling and stuff would just be expedited by 100 years, let's say, because we don't know how long it takes to make ourselves the best version of ourselves. Buddhist teachings, Christian teachings, and stuff aside. Um, so in my sense of things, if I actually get to change sort of my world, then I get to have a the best version of me having a what might feel like the best impact on the world, if that makes sense. Like there's some ego in there, but if I change for the best, then that means that I get to have a very clearly positive impact on the rest of the world. So it's not, it doesn't, it might be the most egotistical way to answer it, but it's like, I'm not interested in changing the world. I'm interested in changing me and then letting the repercussions of that multiply out. I feel like
Yep.
that's way better than just snap my fingers and there's no starving kids in Detroit anymore or something like that. Like, that's a very good thing to wish for, but it
It's
doesn't,
not as feasible.
it's not, well, it's not a fulfilling thing. You know, there's something about having these virtuous goals of like no kids go hungry or eliminate all racism, all these very good, wholesome things to like wish for and look for in the best parts of humanity. But I always end up going back to like, but yeah, but like, have you actually like figured out you? Because the ability for anyone to become Buddha versus Hitler is there. It come like with the Christian upbringing, you are taught with like we are fallen creatures like by nature, and seeing the great evils and the great goodness in of people and out of people, you know, sort of informs that. And so it's one of those like, well, are you building yourself as a tree that has roots that go all the way to hell, but because that also means your branches are going all the way up to heaven? Like, are you actually like, have you established yourself as someone that, like, one of the things that I echo out from Peterson, because he's someone I've listened to a lot over the last like 5 years, is are you going to be the emotionally stable person at your father's funeral so everyone else can cry freely? And that kind of being a rock of your community mentality is part of, I guess, like an archetype that I've embodied and strived for before, long before I heard the metaphor. Um, so those are those pieces. All the money and stuff in the world, it would probably let me do what I'm already doing, because I've not gotten work since moving back yet. This is like 2 months. I'm entering my third month of being unemployed for the longest amount of time ever, and part of that is because of the money I do have. But if I had the infinite money, then it's like I would be doing what I'm doing now, and I would really have to consider how much that level of just finance, like bringing it down to just a tool, would allow me to expedite certain things. But part of like what I end up caring about is like so where I'm at in terms of being in the Orlando comedy scene is I've done little drops here and there to where this article says there have been open mics because I'm like for some reason dodging the Orlando Improv. I don't know why I'm dodging it. I'm supposed to go tonight. Like that's my set goal because I have not found any other comics. I've two of actually the open mics I tracked down. They used to do them and either quit a year ago because it wasn't bringing much to the coffee shop that it was.
Yep.
Or one of them,
Common.
yeah, or it or for this bar over in the Paramore area, the I think he's an owner, but the bartender there, he used to run it. He was the guy that organized it and ran it, and had maybe another comic or had a local comic host it and help him run it or something like that. But the bartender told me that he more or less shut that down maybe a month or so ago because like real Nazis showed up and started doing like their Nazi not funny jokes. And I'm just sitting there like, yeah, it's one of those where it's like I might like in my idealist version of myself, it's like I'm okay with any type of person showing up. My requirement is you have to be funny. So if you're gonna be a Nazi showing up, it's like, all right, I'm gonna be uncomfortable and people are gonna be uncomfortable if you're a Nazi showing up to this open mic. But if you're not funny, I don't have to, and you're consistently not funny, or you're just being so blatantly just racist, anti-Semitic, and all that shit. It's like, no, dude, like you don't even get 3 minutes here. Like I am ripping. It's like, no, you are against everything about what we're trying to do as effective entertainers, right? Even if you come in and just do effective entertainment, it can't even be categorized as stand-up. Like that's not gonna bother me. It's like because musicians
like the poetry or music, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, like I give a lot of I always was giving props while I was there to Kayla and Spencer because they and now Quinn actually from the looks of it, like they were the comics like no, I'm going to start an open mic and I think Chuck's doing one now. So like but Spencer and Kayla were the easiest examples of like no, we're going to start an open mic away from Wise Guys, nothing against Wise Guys, but Wise Guys kind of maxed out what it could do with its 2-room setup before it got the Rickles room. Wednesday night was probably one of the best showcases in the country, or at least how Salt Lake comics would brag about it. But I also I'd been several times to the other bar in downtown Orlando off Wall Street and the Orlando Improv, and those open mics were either good because of a singular comic, or they were just shit. And it was really hard to sort. It's one of those where the first time I went and just went to watch, I was like, this feels like a showcase of comics. Yeah, there's some open, and it's an open mic, but like watching this string of comics, both open micers and sort of veterans of comedy, of at least just the Salt Lake scene, come through and be good or be lucky or be bad. Like it was impressive to watch, for just it being an open mic. But it also meant, especially with where Wise Guys got by the time it is now, where like the chance of you getting on a Wednesday open mic is very low unless you are brand new. Like there's a priority list now, and so the chances of me getting on like would be easy because it'd be my first time. But I would very much have to keep going to Shades, to Midway, to all the other stuff around the Salt Lake and Utah Valley to sort of have my name and my chops sort of vetted for the organizer of the Wise Guys Wednesday night open mic to like get me on stage there consistently for just the open mic on Wednesday. And then Tuesday, I mean, last time I went on at a Tuesday at Wise Guys, I didn't go on till like 10:30 at night.
Yep.
You know, so it's like they've maxed out what they can do with that. It's not even anything against Wise Guys or any of the production or producers or owners. And that's where like the Rickles room out on them buying that cheddar burger was fucking great. So part of what I guess to try to bring it back to the point I was trying to make, see, I'm rambly too. It's not just you. Is pretty much track down, see how the Orlando open mic scene, how healthy or unhealthy it is, and figure out like, okay, what do I actually want to do? Because I have to get the infinite amount of money isn't going to make me better at stand up or acting or any of these crafts that require the hours, and nor is it going to make me better at producing good shows, because that's pretty much like the peak of what I could do inside of a month's time is what that roast was, with 2 sponsors, with the bar already there, with actresses donated, with the props that almost got there or could have been there, and shit like that. And who knows what else like we could get out of Shades or Castle of Chaos. under a longer relationship, and maybe I'll work with Amanda on that more as she tries to keep that mic going and like maybe step it up. But now I get to do the same thing sort of here of like, okay, the Orlando Improv is a good thing that only has like one open mic opportunity because it has only one side room, but the open mic has to end by the time the show in the main room is done.
Mm.
So it's
Yeah.
it's a very tight knit thing because the Orlando Improv isn't a standalone. It's in a tighter version of downtown Salt Lake. So you know how the Gateway area has like the walking around area, but there's streets that are cutting through and stuff.
Yeah.
The Orlando Improv, and you could probably see this if you did like a Google top down look, but the Orlando Improv is on like the second floor in off of I Drive in this very much walking mall-ish area, like not a mall like the Fashion Mall or the Southtown Mall might be, but it's in one of those kind of areas like how Salt Lake is, where there's 2 floors. It just gets this one batch of real estate. I kind of think about Time on the second floor above Wise Guys, but it's just one little corner. It's one section of real estate to work with. And so there's a sidebar that's probably open most days of the week, and that's where the open mic would occur. But that's also where the standing room is, because I've gone to 1 or 2 main stage shows there for like Sinbad or for the guy the guy that was on The Office a few times, the really masculine asshole one. Forget the actor's name. But that bar area is the holding area before you would go into the main room. So if there's shows happening 5, 6, 7 nights a week, that bar area is pretty much what it's taken. So the Orlando Improv, due to just its real estate logistics and also being on the best place it could be as a tourist attraction on I Drive, it doesn't have a lot of ability just functionally. Whether or not the ownership wants to help the scene on a grassroots level or not, it doesn't have the logistical ability unless it bought more real estate in that area, which would be insane, to just expand leases or even buy pure property on I Drive, because it's like if I was going to do tiers of entertainment, there's Disney World, right? Like top tier Disney World. Beaches can be out on the side, but that's like that's really cost effective. You can go East Coast, West Coast, Miami, whatever. That's whatever. But top of the line is Disney World, right? Like $1,000 a person for a fucking experience or whatnot. Like it's insane shit.
It's expensive, yeah.
It's mad expensive, right? And so Disney, like you're not buying on Disney property pretty much. Next level down would be like Universal Studios Islands of Adventure, the Universal Orlando experience, where like Islands of Adventure has your roller coasters, Universal Studios has all of your visually fun shit, you know, like Back to the Future in one of those motion cars with a giant screen and stuff like that. And the next level down from there would be I Drive, which is like just this long walking area that's got like 2 CC's Pizzas, it's got an IHOP, it's got an Olive Garden, it's got a Dave & Buster's, it's got the whole Point Orlando area where the Orlando Improv is, with a theater, with these game rooms, these other things. Like it's just a whole entertainment. Hell at the Moon that I used to work at. So it's a whole long strip, International Drive, I Drive we call it, that is just nothing but easy entertainment to run through. And so, yeah, that sort of informs like where. That's what I've got to work with, is go to the Improv, find comics, and then kind of look around and be like, okay, where are the open mics that are existing? Is there anyone even here? And what bar near me can I like host and people actually like show up? Even just comics just show up too, you know?
Yeah.
And so that,
getting the word out.
Yeah. So if I had infinite money, I could help Orlando Improv buy another fucking batch of real estate to like extend out to be able to actually directly support the grassroots stuff. But you know, it would almost be better off for me to just like buy decent real estate on like the edges of Orlando or something in downtown Orlando and do something more in the stand-up category, because there is SAC here, where Wayne Brady came from, but SAC Comedy Lab is an improv place. So they specialize in giving improv lessons and giving improv sort of shows in the short improv style of way. So yeah, that's sort of like, I guess, would answer in certain ways how I'm dealing with comedy, but also how like infinite money could help certain things, but it's not going to help what I care on working on, such as getting good at comedy, getting good at producing comedy, and getting good at running like mics. Like granting, like that's sort of like the direction I get to go in.
Also, fun fact about Florida: the Mormon Church owns 1% of
Yep.
the land mass in
They are
Florida.
they are the largest real estate owner in the state. They beat Disney
Yeah,
somehow.
yeah, which is weird.
And I know the tracts of land because if you take the 528 for anyone that's in Florida, you take the 528, which is this east-west toll road. I think it dumps off into the 417 before it connects to I-4 on the southern part of the I-4 S curve that makes a vertical cut through Orlando. The 528, once you get past like Lake Nona or whatnot area, there's this just swaths of property that don't even have cows on them. They just have like cleared property with their fences up and like one set of reserved trees off in the distance. Because that's like a rule. Like you can't do clean clear. You have to leave a certain percentage of the original like vegetation there or something. But there's it's just swaths of empty property just sitting there. And there's one temple here that I've driven by a few times. There's one temple here, and it is immaculately kept.
I believe it.
Yeah, it was impressive driving. I never see anyone on the property, and we will see like the pairs of like missionaries like around town, like here and there. But yeah, so
It's not Salt Lake. Yeah. There's a place. Done like two things. There's a place called Three Rivers Barbecue or something.
Four Rivers, yeah, Four Rivers Barbecue.
Four Rivers.
Yeah.
I had one guy rant and rave about how great it is.
So,
and it sounds like for open mics, the biggest problem are Nazis, like literal Nazis.
So far, yeah. So did your friend just rant and rave about the barbecue at Four Rivers or whatnot, or what?
Yeah, there was actually a professor at BYU Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
My brother's moving to Orlando for a occupational therapy school.
Right.
And he was just like, dude, the barbecue there is like probably the best. He's like, I will pay you like $50 for like a thing of like the barbecue sauce from there.
Yeah.
And, I
appreciate. So I've been to Four Rivers a few times. I don't go often for probably two reasons. One, I don't love barbecue that much. Two, I don't eat out often anyway. We're going back to sort of the frugal stuff. Like one of the answers that came into my head is like, I'd do with the infinite money. I would just do what I do now and put it in like a safe, secure place or whatnot. It's like, but I have infinite money. What am I doing this for? It's like, it's a hypothetical error and it's not real life. But Four Rivers has a religious following pretty much. I didn't even know what they were, but I was seeing their stickers like years ago because it's that dash with like a 4 with like the center beam of the writing also having the R on the other side. So I was seeing that logo in high school back like in 08 or whatever. So they have a religious following, and part of what informs that is that it is a Christian original like business like Chick-fil-A is. They're closed on Sundays.
Oh, right.
So and what I sort of enjoy seeing is that part of what I think, all the evil stuff of Chick-fil-A aside, is that part of what makes certain things like really good is having that faith that at least the Christian faith produces out of people, that has them like believe even more than most entrepreneurs like what they're going to do. And so and not to mention they have their churches to like congregate in and help like the initial boost of everything.
It's not, the capital, it's not just about the capitalism, it's also about like the capital used for something else.
Yeah, and in the community that allows the initial push of the product, of the business, and so on. And so that's a really good thing, because at least they're not selling babies on spikes. That's an Eddie Izzard reference for those that aren't paying attention. He's a British comic that I've loved his Dress to Kill special since fucking ever, dude. But yeah, Four Rivers is good for like sort of two reasons. So there's a few things that I would really like highlight about them. One, they're hyper successful in terms of how their branding and stuff has permeated. The food is good, because you walk in, you're immediately like in a cafeteria line, because you're going to grab a tray, you're going to see them be cutting brisket like right there. They're going to have their regular like a Subway sort of station thing, but you have the whole chalkboard menu up there, and they've got bread pudding. They've got all these Southern traditional barbecue things like bread pudding, corn on the cob, pulled pork, brisket, so on and so forth. So you have that whole 3 tiers of like back and forth, not to mention like the menus outside, because they would have lines outside.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so they were running ship. And when I say they have a religious following, like it's insane. And so you get there, you run through from the start piece left to right. You pick out what you want off of the board, and they'll just make your platter right there. You get to the end of the line, you pay for your food, and you go into this other cafeteria-like setting with all of these like nice, clean wood benches and stuff. And then they have a dessert bar, this little dessert kiosk thing down the way where you can get like slices of cake like this big, and they would have just the kind of flavors that you wish the local like grocery store knew about. Because like one of them that they had was like this orange creamsicle cake, so it's like a 3-tier big ass thing of cake, and it had a bunch of orange creamsicle like morsels, like Hershey morsels. You'll know what I'm talking about. But like the little Hershey Kisses that you would put inside of cookies or whatnot for the people at home. Because I know this because I fucking put this stuff on the shelf in retail for a long time. But it would be like a layer of icing and then all those morsels just coating the outside of it. So it was just mint. So it just had like that. It had that roughness in its branding and in its vibe to be like that down home country thing. But it originated in Winter Park, Florida, which is like one of the ritzy sides of town. You know, like we have a Park Ave area where there's like a park and there's all these like bougie businesses and stuff like that. So yeah, that is Four Rivers. So if you ever make it down, or when your brother makes it down, like yeah, Four Rivers in Winter Park is the original location, I believe, on where it started, and it's a good experience. It's a good experience, especially if you like barbecue.
I think that's all the questions I have right now.
That's good. We can we got a little bit of time left. I mean, we can just pivot anywhere we kind of wanted from here. Like, I guess sort of a forward-thinking thing, because you have other comedy things that you want to do. Have you tried improv work? Because I know Nami would be a very good. He loves the art and he loves teaching it. So
he has it on Saturdays at 2 p.m. at
the bistro.
Mark the Bistro.
Yeah, the bistro. Yeah,
I've been a few times. I'm very inconsistent. It is a weird hour on a Saturday, but it's just what they can get. Improv is harder for me.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite game is like Scenes from a Hat, or just like Scenes from a Hat, where it's like, here's a setup, like what are Kamikaze's pilot's last thoughts. It's like, I wasn't supposed to come into work today, or something like that. Like the one-liners, I like.
Yeah, like you have that Rodney Dangerfield kind of shit going on for just those one-liners and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So does improv attract you for the challenge of it, or is it just like challenging and you're kind of like it's there, especially because
it's a good challenge. It definitely helps you stretch yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And just being quicker on your feet and more comfortable with discomfort. Right. And like improv, it's more about staying true to the scene.
Yeah.
Where stand-up is like, you're always trying to be funny.
Yeah.
And improv, it's like, it's okay if you're not funny.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's just part of the scene.
Yeah.
It's just a very different vibe.
I remember one of the things because I took 2 levels of the SAC improv classes here in Orlando with my wife years ago. But one of the things that they kind of said was that the funny will happen of its own accord. You playing out the scene genuinely per the improv guidelines will allow it to be dramatic, allow it to be funny, allow it to be sort of genuine, and the funny will just occur. Like you don't have to make it happen like sort of like how you have to do with stand up. Or with more written work and stuff like that. Cool. Let me think about this. Cool. So do you have anything you wanted to plug before we get on out of here? Socials. You got your YouTube channel, the Dennis McMenace YouTube channel, where you're To Catch a Missionary.
It's like Dennis McMenace Comedy on Instagram. But I'm like, I don't ever post, so it feels weird for me to plug either of those. But yeah, the Dennis McMenace Productions, or Mr. McMenace. I don't remember what I have it as. The Catch a Missionary.
It's Dennis McMenace for the To Catch a Missionary. It's the one video that's on this channel.
Yeah, and it's like I hope to plan another by the latest end of January.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like they're very esoteric,
Right.
and I want to make a few more. Just like my original thing was shit posting on Reddit, and I kind of want to go back to that, like
Right.
making like shit posts for like brands,
Right.
like a T-shirt for McDonald's. That's like McDonald's employees don't smile, they grimace, something like that, like the
Right.
grimace shake.
It feels like you're kind of going back to like this visual art style of comedy and
Yeah,
stuff. Like I feel like you like because I always thought that you were funny, and it was very clear that you were like writing and really working through like a notebook of jokes on stage. But between the baking, in your original comedy line of just being on Reddit doing like shitposts, which is effectively it's just a visual media. So it just sounds like you're
yeah,
gravitating back to like a visual media form of comedy and everything. So,
yeah. And just is it's like for my actual stand up, I'm trying to do stories from life,
mm-hmm.
but like I have interesting stories, but it's like there's no point. It's just like that's just something that happened to me, or like it's hard to make it funny. It's like I know a lot of the comedians like they have a somewhat true story and embellish it
Yeah.
and make it better, but like I'm just having a hard time for that transition.
Right. Like, do you feel like your
Uh,
stories have to like make a point or like give a moral or something like that? Like, what do you feel like is something that you feel you have to do with your stories outside of trying to make them funny?
yeah, it's like I have to make them funny for an audience, a broad audience. And it's like one on one, they'd be funny, but like to a random group of people, it's like, okay, kid, that's interesting. I don't know what to do with that either.
I'd like to see how that progresses, honestly, because I feel like just listening to a bunch of pros talk about it, clearly the pros talking about it, not me talking about it, is that there's something about telling like your genuine story and framing it out so that you can tell it as true as it can be, and so a general audience will understand it.
Yes.
Kind of going back to like the little bit of help that I gave to Chuck on one of his jokes. Um, that I don't know. It's reminding me of just how much like learning how to be a good storyteller sort of informs like can you tell the story like good, and then can you find opportunities, I guess, to punch it up and make
Yep.
it funny, like either by comparison, by metaphor, by something, some of those mechanics that are out there for inside of the art form. I'm
Yeah.
I'm very interested to see you progress inside of that because I feel like you're departing from like the one-liners
Trying.
into the more story type of comedy, and that feels like it's an uncomfortable challenge for you.
It is. Forward Jr., Sam Morril, and Taylor Tomlinson
Hmm.
all do like really good jobs of like banger after banger or like keeping
Yeah,
it tight
yeah,
and joke after joke instead of like long setup, punchline, long setup. It's just like they have a long setup, but they have multiple jokes inside of it.
yeah.
And it's like that is impressive.
Yeah, for sure. No,
And I mean, they're
Sam
not the
Morril's
only
one of
ones
my
who do it.
favorites. Sam Morril's one of my favorite.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
like
his dry shit. Like,
he's my favorite comedian because of like how much I relate, and I'm like if I was more serious or like and got better, I feel like I'd be most like him of all the comedians.
right? Yeah. I could see exactly what you're talking about there. Yeah, awesome. Well,
So,
thank you for coming on. Thank you for
thanks for having me.
entertaining this for 2 hours.
No
And
problem. Thanks for the kind words.
I will see you around on the internet. And let's go ahead and
You
get out
know
of
it.
here.